Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick. Welcome to another episode of Higher Energetic Resonance Inspirations. This week I'm returning back to the Wheel of Life series and talking about spirituality. I believe that if we don't incorporate spirituality and exploration of ourselves as spiritual beings as we move through midlife, this midlife transition is going to be way more difficult than it need be. And the reason I will say this is recently I've been looking around in different spaces for midlife women, midlife groups, just to see what the conversation is. And the conversation always seems to lean towards remedies for symptoms, which I understand. This is the world that we live in right now. So if you're experiencing some pain or some kind of symptom, there is a remedy for the symptom. And yet we don't go deeper to really find out why we're experiencing those symptoms. And yes, we can go one layer deeper and say, as midlife women, the majority of us will be transitioning through perimenopause and menopause. And that brings with it many physical symptoms that may or may not be able to be treated or avoided or being able to be coped with. And while I appreciate that and while I honour that, one, I find that my own menopause and perimenopause journey, I'm not even entirely sure at what stage I am within that, has not been the textbook, has not been the way that I could measure up against other women and sit and say that I'm suffering from this and go into the whole story about the suffering and the physical and the mental symptoms that they might appreciate. Or the main reason I would say is my background. My background and my upbringing was that I grew up in a household where I was probably the only quote-unquote healthy one. Both my mom and my brother experienced multiple chronic illnesses, and I was the one who was kind of watching this from the sidelines and seeing how they were treated in terms of the way that people responded to them, and also the way that they were treated by the medical profession in terms of pharmaceuticals and so forth. And while I appreciate that pharmaceuticals work well for many people, my experience of that, in particular, watching the way that my mum was treated for the diagnosis that she was given, the pharmaceutical remedies that she was given contributed to a decline in her health over time. They may have stabilized her, they may have lifted her up when she was low, brought her down when she was high, but there was a price to pay for that always. And ultimately the price that she paid was the price of paying with her life and dying at 77, which in my family is way too young. Usually my aunts are going to make it to late 80s, late 90s, as that's just the way it is. So for her to be dying in her 70s is, no one believed it, and yeah, it happened. So I have a little bit of a sticking point when it comes to just looking at the surface level, and just being the inquisitive person that I always have been. I've had a curiosity of, where is there more? Where are we not looking? Where are there areas that we can delve into a little bit deeper? Because I truly believe that there is more to what we experience in this world, whatever age you are, than the human form. And I think more and more people are opening up to the idea that there's more to us than just the confines of our physical being. When I look at both sides of the coin, when I look at the way that neuroscientists talk about things, quantum physicists talk about things, and when I look at the way that spiritual practitioners talk about things, everyone's talking about the same thing. They just have different language, and then one is more believed than others because it's called science. But if both sides of the aisle are talking about the same thing, then maybe we should just listen to the fact that everyone is experiencing the same thing. So how does this relate to midlife? The way that it relates to midlife is that I believe when we go through this transition of moving from being young woman into a midlife woman before we go into our elder stages, we are experiencing so many transformations and so many awakenings about the way that our world is, our own personal world is responding and reacting to us, the way that we want to show up, the way that we want to be. And yet we don't go deeper, or as a rule, we don't go deeper. And I think by, again, skimming over the surface of these things and not looking deeper into what does this mean for me as a spiritual being, that we're missing a trick somewhat, that we're missing a way of being able to transcend the ramifications or the detrimental experience that we have when we go through those things. And that's not to say that if you're having a hot flush, or if you're experiencing brain fog, or all of those other experiences that you have, that they're not to be addressed in the way that you feel that they need to be addressed. But I think just by putting a patch on it and believing that that's going to be enough is where we don't really work with the lingering experience that we have around that. And that's why I feel that spirituality within midlife and exploring spirituality within midlife can actually help to give us a greater perspective. Because if you're just experiencing yourself on this level, and yet there is a higher way that you can view what you're seeing, it gives you more scope, and also it empowers you to be able to think, there could be a greater experience for me here. There could be a greater lesson for me to learn. If we think about all the things that we've experienced during our lifetime, and now we're at this midpoint in our life where everything feels like it's falling apart, what if we looked at it from a spiritual point of view, that everything works out for your good? You're not here to suffer, even though you may be experiencing suffering. And if you are experiencing suffering, there's a lesson to be learned. I would say that if your experience of what you're going through at this point in time is one of suffering, then there is a way to pull back and actually see what you're being told. Because there's always a lesson in everything. Anything that we come up against that causes us pain is a moment for pause. If we think about any time that you feel pain, when you feel pain in a particular area, what does it do? It draws attention to that area. So now, instead of just going on and thinking that everything is okay, there's an area of pain that is drawing your attention to that, for something for you to look at and really explore on a deeper level, and not just try and soothe the pain away by any kind of emotional band-aid, as it were, but go deeper and find out where this pain comes from. And oftentimes it can be something that roots back to years, decades prior, that we've not really dealt with, and that higher aspect of ourselves is pushing us almost face to the mirror to have a look at that part of ourselves that's causing us pain. If we ask our higher selves, what is this trying to teach me? What is it showing me? What am I not seeing? And can you show me what I'm not seeing, so that I can get a greater understanding of the lesson that's here for me? By asking the question and holding back, invariably the truth will always come through. I can't think of a time in my life where I've asked a question and the answer not come. Even through difficult times. And if I think of all the difficult times that I've been through, if I think about the challenges I'm experiencing now, I could fall into the despair of not fully understanding what it is. Why is it happening to me? I'm a good person. Why should this happen to me? But what I've realized in particular from the challenge that I'm experiencing, or the challenges that I'm experiencing now, is they are putting my face right into the mud of a situation. It's a recurring situation that seems to have escalated over time, and now it's got to the point where it's almost critical. And when I got out of the pain and the why me, I saw the why it was happening. And that's why I think it's a great opportunity when we look at something from a spiritual aspect and see ourselves from a higher level, that I'm being shown where there are almost cul-de-sacs in my life. I could say there are things that I'm blocking, but I would say there are awarenesses that I didn't have. And what this has shown me is I've got to a point where I can't go any further with this. And this is why I'm being challenged on this right now, and challenged in a beautiful way, because it's my higher self, my soul is going, we need to find a solution. We need to break the tie that this has to that moment that you've been bringing this thing forward, this kind of rote behavior that you have continued to adopt, thinking that it would get you through this next period of life, and it absolutely will not. So with this, I know that I'm experiencing immense growth. And even though the solution or the complete salvation of this experience isn't completely gone, I know that I'll be able to look back on this in 2 or 3 months' time and know that it was the lesson of a lifetime, because I'll be on the other side of it, looking back and seeing so much, and also be able to share with others and also help them through when they come across these certain things in midlife especially. So this is the conversation that I want to say when it comes to spirituality in midlife. And this is not just about, the light, airy-fairy, new age love and light, just thinking that everything is positive vibes only, because we all know things are not always positive. The vibes ain't always so good. But if when we're faced with pain, when we're faced with those challenges, that we ask the question of, like, what is this for? What am I supposed to see at this moment in time? It might be painful. The truth that you might see is painful. I know for me it was. The recollections, if it's something that has been recurring in your life that will come up, may be startling to realize that these things have been continuing on. Again, I can say that's definitely something that I've been experiencing for the past few weeks. Also, we're in a period of intense astrological changes and seriously transformative energies. So I'm riding on the back of that, and it has been going through the fire. But what it has shown me, and what it has reminded me to do, is to realign with my spirituality. In a deeper way. I've always had that kind of spiritual practice and spiritual understanding, and that has been part of my work along with creativity. But this time around, I've been shown the importance of really aligning with myself as a spiritual being and viewing the journey that I'm on from that spiritual and soul aspect. It has been a wake-up call for me, because I stepped away from it, because I got a little bit disillusioned with certain spiritual communities and practices and the way that it just went. But by creating it for myself, making it look personal, creating my own spiritual philosophy, it has shown me that it's given me the most amount of sense of power and direction and alignment with myself that I'd kind of veered off. I would never be one to go down the road of any kind of band-aid, be that physical or emotional. But I'm grateful for this lesson, because it's reminded me that spirituality is important in my life. And when I find that core and see my journey from my spiritual self, this midlife transition becomes a beautiful ride. So thank you for joining me again on another episode of Higher Energetic Resonance Inspirations. If you haven't already, please check the link in the show notes and download the midlife meditation. And also, I'm looking for 5 women this month to work alongside me who really want to bloom into their midlife. There are powerful women out there who are ready to transform and have this second half of their life be the legacy that they create for themselves, and also the guidance and the inspiration that they will be for all the other women around them. So thank you again. See you in the next episode.